Libra, you didn't even expect this gift from God in your life. A gift from God. That's what they've called your whole life, the way you balance everything around you. But no one has ever asked you, a gift for whom exactly? Because there's a version of this story that you know by heart. The one about the gentle diplomatic Libra, born knowing how to bring peace to any environment. Everyone's seen that part. That's just the superficial version. There's another one that almost no one has told you, hidden behind every compliment you've received for being so balanced. A version where this gift was born from a deeper, more wounded place than anyone around you imagined. A calling that the Bible described long before the zodiac existed, that of someone chosen to heal, but who first needs to learn to look at themselves without averting their face. If you are a Libra or love someone who is, what follows will rearrange some pieces you've been carrying for years without realizing their weight. By the end of this video, something inside you will finally make sense in a way it never has before. And perhaps you will understand for the first time the true magnitude of the gift you received. Imagine a person born seeing colors that no one else sees. From the outside, it seems magical. Inside, it's exhausting because there's no off switch. Libra doesn't choose when to perceive the imbalance in an environment, a conversation, or a poorly placed silence between two people. They simply notice, and almost instantly, they're already calculating how to fix it even if no one asked. Over time, this instinct becomes a protective mechanism. Maintaining external harmony isn't about being kind, it's about preventing chaos from getting too close internally. Because for Libra, discord has never been just social discomfort. At some point in life, it was synonymous with emotional danger. A tense room, a relationship in conflict, an unresolved conflict. All of this activates something older than the situation itself. And then he does what he always does. He softens, he moderates, he gives in a little here, adjusts there, finds the word that calms everyone down. But nobody notices the effort behind it because from the outside, it seems natural, almost automatic. As if balancing the environment were simply who Libra is and not something he learned to do to survive emotionally. But there's one question that most people have never asked a Libra. Nor has a Libra ever asked itself. When was the last time someone balanced something for you? For most sign language users, the answer takes a long time to arrive. And when it does, it hurts more than it should. Because there's a silent pattern behind this ability to bring peace. Libra has learned, without realizing it, to measure its own worth by the amount of balance it can offer. The more it resolves, the more it feels it deserves to be there. The less it needs to ask for in return, the more it feels it's doing the right thing. But this creates a situation where the equation never balances, because a scale that only receives from one side is not in equilibrium at all. It's overloaded, disguised as stable. Imagine a scale that spends its life adjusting itself, recalculating the exact balance point for everything around it, but one of the plates is always empty, not because no one has anything to put there, but because it never learned to wait for someone to put something there. This is the pattern that repeats itself in almost every relationship Libra builds. They enter knowing how to give. Rarely do they enter knowing how to receive. And the strangest thing is that they don't even perceive this as a problem because it's been like this their whole life. But there's a question that starts to nudge very quietly in some corner of the mind on days when tiredness no longer disguises itself as readiness. If balancing others is something so natural, why has no one ever asked what Libra really needs to feel supported at least once without having to balance anything in return? It was in seeking answers to these reflections that the digital book, The 12 Laws of the Universe, that helped the zodiac sign overcome spiritual envy, was born. More than just a simple read, it brings together teachings, interpretations, and exercises to help you understand patterns, develop a more conscious attitude, and cultivate a stronger mindset in the face of difficulties. For Libra, this book is no longer just another task to solve for others. It's a different mental stance, seeking balance that begins within before trying to maintain harmony outside. It's the tool to stop getting lost in the peace of others and rediscover your own. Many people have already begun this process of self-discovery. Now it's your turn. If something within you has recognized this pattern so far, it's because it's real. And this recognition only translates into real change if you act while the feeling is still alive, before routine stifles it again. The link is in the first pinned comment. Access is limited. Click now and download your copy. Now I want to ask you something in the comments. When was the last time you prioritized your own well-being over that of others? Write it down below, honestly. This question lingers longer than Libra would like, because the answer, when it finally appears, is unsettling. The truth is that Libra learned very early on to trade presence for usefulness. They don't need to be loved for who they are. They just need to be needed, and as long as they are needed, they feel safe. This is the most silent pattern of self-sabotage that exists. The more indispensable they become for the balance of others, the further they distance themselves from their own stability. Observe how this works in practice. In a discussion between friends, he's the first to find the words that calm everyone down and the last to say what he really felt about it. In a relationship, he adjusts his own behavior with almost invisible precision, just so the other person never has to worry. And at the end of the day, when he finally stops, he realizes he spent all his energy taking care of the other person's well-being and has almost none left to take care of his own. This isn't pure generosity. It's fear disguised as virtue. Fear that if he stops balancing, nobody will want him around anymore. And here's the most uncomfortable detail of all. No one ever asked him to carry this burden alone. He decided long ago that this was the only safe way to be loved. Perhaps it started in childhood, where affection and usefulness became intertwined too early, where being nice, being easygoing, being the one who didn't cause trouble, became synonymous with being liked. It doesn't have to have been anything dramatic. Sometimes a compliment repeated too many times is enough. It's so good that you're so easygoing. It's good that you understand. For a child to learn, without anyone noticing, that their role there was to make life easier for others. And the problem with a belief formed so early on is that it never needs permission to continue. It just continues. It becomes automatic. It becomes part of what the person believes to be their personality, when in reality, it's just a very old strategy that worked once and has never been questioned again. That's why adult Libras are surprised when someone asks what they really want. The question stifles something inside, because for years the right question has never been, "What do I want?" but rather, "What avoids conflict?" They are completely different questions, but they have learned to disguise themselves from one another. If you recognized yourself in this pattern of trading presence for usefulness, it's worth pausing for a second before moving on to the next chapter. The digital book, The 12 Laws of the Universe That Help the Zodiac Sign Overcome Spiritual Envy, brings together teachings, interpretations, and exercises to help you understand exactly this type of pattern, develop a more conscious attitude towards it, and cultivate a stronger mindset in the face of the difficulties it brings. For Libra, it's the practical extension of something they already know how to do well for others: finding balance. Only now applied to themselves. Accessibility is limited. The link is in the first pinned comment. Click now and start building the balance you deserve to receive, not just give. There's an ancient idea spanning centuries of spiritual texts about certain gifts that aren't innate. They are born from a specific wound, shaped precisely to heal what first wounded the one who possesses them. The Bible speaks repeatedly of people called to bring peace, and almost always, before they can do that for others, they need to learn to make peace with their own pain. No one can truly offer what they have never received. It's like a spring that only delivers clean water after passing through the hardest rock in its path. The pressure is no accident. It's the process that separates what is impurity from what is, in fact, sustenance. Libra, unknowingly, lives an emotional version of exactly that spring. Every tense situation that it softens for others is also a chance, not yet taken, to soften something within itself. But he rarely stops long enough to realize this, because stopping means looking inward, and looking inward is, for Libra, the only imbalance he truly doesn't know how to manage. There's a passage that talks about bearing one another's burdens, but which also reminds us, right after, that each person has their own load to carry. Libra usually only remembers the first part. They know how to carry the weight of others with an almost artistic delicacy, but they forget or pretend to forget that the second part is also about them, that there is also a burden of their own, waiting to be acknowledged, not distributed. And it's not about selfishness, it's about completeness. A gift that only flows outward, never returning, is not sustainable generosity. It's slow drainage, disguised as virtue, until the day there's simply nothing left to offer. There's a moment, usually silent, when this dynamic reaches its peak. It's not a visible crisis with shouting or breakups. It's more subtle than that. It's the night when Libra arrives home, after resolving one person's conflict, listening to another's venting, adjusting their own opinion so as not to displease a third, and finally, alone, feels a weariness that isn't physical. It's the weariness of someone who decorated other people's homes with such care, year after year, that they forgot to ask how their own home was doing inside. At this point, a question becomes impossible to postpone. Is there a way to stop doing this without ceasing to be who you are? Because that's where Libra's deepest fear lies. It's not the fear of conflict itself. It's the fear that, by ceasing to balance everything around them, they will discover that they no longer know who they are without this role. That perhaps, behind the peacemaker, there is someone they never had time to really get to know. And it is precisely here that the question changes direction. It is no longer about neglecting others. It is about understanding that caring for oneself is not a betrayal of the gift. It is the part that has always been missing for it to truly function. Here's the most unsettling paradox in this whole story. The person most skilled at seeing both sides of any situation is, at the same time, the one who most avoids seeing their own wounded side. They can mediate a conflict between strangers with impressive clarity, but ask them how they feel when they're alone, with no one to balance them out, and the silence that follows speaks volumes. It's like a mirror that perfectly reflects everything around it, except the hand holding it. Libra sees others with rare clarity. They see themselves only in fragments, always fleetingly, always too quickly to hurt. It's also worth noting how this changes the way Libra chooses the people around them. Without realizing it, they tend to gravitate towards those who need balance. People in crisis, unstable relationships, tense environments that require someone to mediate. Not because they enjoy chaos, but because that's where they know clearly what their role is. In tranquil environments, where no one needs them for anything specific, a strange unease appears, a mixture of relief and insecurity, as if peace without purpose were, in some way, less deserved. Notice a curious detail about this behavior. When a friend goes through a crisis, Libra can pinpoint exactly what's happening. You're exhausted because you've given more than you've received. You're like this because nobody asked how you felt. Accurate phrases, uttered with the naturalness of someone who has seen this in other people for years. But ask them to apply the same phrase to themselves, and something freezes. As if the mirror suddenly becomes confused just when it's time to show its own reflection. This isn't hypocrisy, it's protection, because recognizing one's own pattern would mean admitting how much one has contributed to sustaining this cycle. And it's always easier to help someone else free themselves from a burden than to admit that you're carrying the same burden, only better hidden. What if, just once, he stopped that automatic reflex and asked himself, what would I see if I looked at myself with the same attention I give to everyone else? This mirror that Libra avoids looking directly at is precisely the starting point for real change. And it is for this kind of perspective that the digital book, The 12 Laws of the Universe, that help this zodiac sign overcome spiritual envy, was conceived. It brings together teachings, interpretations, and exercises to help you understand these patterns, develop a more conscious attitude towards them, and cultivate a stronger mindset in the face of recurring difficulties. It's not about learning to see the outside world more clearly. Libra already understands that all too well. It's about training that same sharp gaze inward. The link is in the first pinned comment. Availability is limited. Click now and start building the clarity and genius you deserve. This question, however uncomfortable it may seem, is the beginning of something Libra had never allowed before: to receive with the same naturalness with which it had always known how to give. Because the true gift was never the perfect harmony he effortlessly bestows upon others. That's only the visible part. The real gift is the ability to transform his own pain into understanding, to take everything he's learned about imbalance, about conflict, about the difficulty of existing in peace, and convert it into something that heals those around him. But this gift remains incomplete as long as he doesn't accept turning that care back upon himself. Imagine a tree that has spent its entire life offering shade, fruit, and shelter to passers-by, but has never stopped long enough to nourish its own roots. It still flourishes because it is in its nature to flourish, but it flourishes with an unseen effort, outwardly supporting what is already crying out for care from within. No one asks the tree if it's tired. People only notice the shade it offers, the fruit it bears, never the soil that sustains it all underneath. And the tree, over time, learns not to wait to be asked. It continues to flourish because it seems easier to keep going than to admit that it also needs water. But there's a difference between a tree and a person. A tree doesn't choose to stop. Libra does. And it's precisely in that choice that the possibility of change lies. It's not about ceasing to bloom for others. It's about remembering that well-cared-for roots produce a more lasting shade than roots that sustain everything alone, at the limit, without ever being watered in return. So what changes when Libra finally accepts that it deserves to receive and not just give? The root changes. The reason why it offers balance changes. It ceases to be a test of worth and becomes a genuine choice. And it is only when this happens that the gift closes the circle. The energy that always went out finally finds its way back. This shows up in small things at first. A Libra who learns to say they're tired without apologizing for it. A Libra who accepts care offered by someone without feeling the need to reciprocate immediately. A Libra who, in a difficult conversation, allows their silence to be heard as well, and not just used to soothe the other person's silence. None of these things seem dramatic from the outside, but inside, each one is a small reconstruction of a pattern that took a lifetime to form. And that's how, little by little, the present begins to take shape, not as a single definitive event, but as a repeated, almost silent practice of allowing one's own side of the scale to also be filled. Some people will call it maturity, some will call it therapy, self-knowledge, whatever name contemporary language prefers to use. But at its core, it's something simpler and older than any label. It's the permission to exist without needing to justify it with utility. It's remembering that Libra doesn't need to balance the entire world to deserve its place in it. In the end, perhaps the greatest gift Libra can receive from God isn't the peace they already know how to build for others. It might be the silent and simple permission to keep some of it for themselves. To stop, for a moment, being everyone's scale, and remember that they too have two plates, and that both deserve to be filled. There is a quiet beauty in this, in the way Libra transforms any environment into a more habitable place, any relationship into a safer place. And there is an even greater beauty in the moment when he understands that he can also be that place for himself. Not because he has learned the perfect technique of balance, but because finally he has stopped demanding it only of himself and has allowed life to give back a little of what he has always known how to offer.